The crisis is, of course, going to leave some scars on a post-COVID world. What are these and what do investors need to consider for these?
Yeah, Tina, I think there will probably be two victims of this crisis. The first victim is likely to be globalization as we know it. And the reason is that many companies are realizing that their supply chains became too complex over the last 10, 20 years. Supply chains were optimized, just-in-time production, relying on the ready availability of swift transport and all that. So all of this is going to change. So companies will look to onshore parts of their supply chain. They will look to build redundancies within the supply chain in order to be able to weather future disruptions. Also, I think you'll see more lasting restrictions to travel by some governments, and on the demand side, you will see maybe less willingness to travel by many people, even once the virus is under control. So what this means is this will hit those economies, sectors, and companies most that have benefited most from trade and from tourism. So that's the first victim, globalization. The second victim of this crisis could well be central bank independence as we know it. And the reason is that we are likely to see a massive further increase in government and private sector debt. Governments and the private sector will need all the help they can get from central banks in the form of low or even negative interest rates and in the form of more government bond purchases by central banks. And we think it'll be very hard for central banks to deny this form of help, even if inflation rises over the medium and longer term. So I think one of the remedies will be that central banks will cap yields either directly with various forms of yield curve control or indirectly, but by just buying large amounts of government bonds, even at a time when inflation rises. So this is one of the ways how we can address the rising debt that we are likely to see in the public, but also in the private sector.
By the way, just one thing to add back to the shorter term outlook, we focused a lot on the U-shaped baseline, the risks, the downside risks to that baseline. There are also upside risks. Let's hope that there are medical breakthroughs in terms of vaccines or treatment, which could lead us to, over time, upgrade some of our forecasts compared with the baseline. In the cyclical outlook, in a lot of our thinking, we are more focused on the downside risks. Unfortunately, that's where we think the balance of risks are in the short term. There is an upside risk case as well, which is possible. We'll see some of that realized as well.